Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Album Homework Assignment. Yes, it's Sunday. We've got in the co-captain's chairs today, facing off against each other. We've got Scott Berry and Sean Tonar. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing well, Pete. Good to see you.
Same here.
I'm back from vacation.
Yeah, vacation was great. I'm so happy to see both you guys as my first two people to talk to here on the Zoom in Sea of Tranquility on my first day back. So it's Sunday. I'm ready for this hot and heavy album homework assignment show. I'm so curious to see what you guys have decided. So just so everybody knows, generally speaking, in fact, probably like 95% of the time, I do not know what our two combatants have given each other as assignments. So I kind of like to go in blind on all these. So I'm always curious if it's albums that I know, curious to hear what your guys' takes on them. If they're not, maybe I learned something too. So we're going to have Scott kick us off with his assignment that was given to him by Sean today.
Very good. Well, Pete, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. And hope you had an awesome vacation.
I did.
Everybody give it up for Pete Pardo, hardest working man on YouTube.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Vacation.
Thank you.
This is a lot of fun. Sean and I conversed through Messenger about our histories and preferences regarding music. And it turns out we do have a lot of common ground, but I wouldn't say on everything. Before you paired us up for this exercise, I mainly knew him from in the prog seat. And I got to say that was a little intimidating because you guys cover some pretty obscure stuff sometimes. I thought I was a big prog fan, but and I'm a big fan of, Rush, Yes, Genesis, Floyd, Tull, the big names. But you guys cover a lot of obscure stuff. And but I learned things. And since I started watching the channel about 2 years ago, I've really warmed up to King Crimson and Porcupine Tree. So I'm expanding my horizons. So I'm willing to expand them some more. So Sean's picks for me was Three Friends by Gentle Giant. And I know they are a favorite of many who watch and contribute to this channel. They've been a band I've been kind of meaning to check out for a while, but there's just been so many others ahead of them. And there's just so many things that I see on Sea of Tranquility that got ahead of that. So when he suggested this one, I was pretty psyched about it. It's like, okay, time to dive into this band here. And right off the bat, I can tell these guys were very musically ambitious and complex in a way that a lot of bands are not. And they set out to make the kind of music that they wanted to make, and sales be damned. And I can respect that. I like a band that just knows what they want to do, and they do it. So let's dive into the tracks here. Prologue, first track on the album, lays the groundwork, and there's just so much instrumentation going on in this song. I'm looking at the credits in the booklet, and number of instruments being played very well by just 5 guys. It's just staggering. It sounds to my ears a little like a cross between maybe King Crimson, Frank Zappa, circa 69 to 75, and some jazz fusion, maybe, along the lines of Mahavishnu Orchestra, that kind of thing. And Gary Green is just killing it on guitar on this. So it's a great opening to the album. The vocals on there, I would say, are okay. They're kind of very understated on this track. Nothing special, but it kind of grows on you. And the second one, shoot, what was the name of the second track on there? That's not School Days. School Days. And the theme and the concept of the album just sort of come into play on this track. About 3 friends from school go their separate ways after graduation, and finally reunite many years later, only to find out their lives took different paths, and they didn't have as much in common anymore. And I think that's a message that a lot of us in our 40s and 50s could probably relate to.
Absolutely.
Song starts out very whimsical and carefree, school days. the kids, they're having fun. And but gradually, you know, about around the 3-minute mark, it starts takes this dark turn with the dark chords and the piano, and it's about a 7.5-minute song. And that one and one of the other tracks on the album are the longest songs on the album, which by prog standards is kind of on the short side.
I was just going to say, they generally speaking don't do a lot of long tracks.
Yeah, kind of economical prog, I guess you would call it.
There is no Gentle Giant 10-minute epic or 20-minute or any of that.
Yeah.
Although
I guess they didn't get the memo, huh?
Yeah. Well, usually they cram more into 5 minutes than most people do into 15. So
absolutely.
Well, I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. But the song finishes off in a very sort of chaotic way. Again, the vocals, though, I seem a little on the understated side on this track. I do notice that Derek Schulman kind of changes his vocal style on the songs. And some of them I like more than others, I'll say that.
Yeah, well, he has a really kind of powerful delivery, and other times he's a little more understated. And then if you hear a really nice, polite voice, that's the keyboard player, Carrie.
Ah, okay.
So
good to know.
He sings kind of the softer stuff.
Usually. And I think too, again, I'm not sure on this album, I don't remember, Phil Schulman, who was in the band up until I think just after Octopus, he also does little bits of vocal pieces here and there as well. But it's so, and he also has a very mellow voice, kind of like Carrie, but the more boisterous voice is definitely Derek.
Oh yeah.
Gotcha.
You know.
Well, and I'm moving on to track 3, Working All Day. Wasn't too crazy on initial listen on wasn't that crazy about his voice on this one. It's got this very exaggerated vocal style, and but I get what he's trying to do. I mean, the song is called Working All Day, and it's basically about the tedium of working a job that just sucks the life out of you. So he's like, working all day, you know, and you know, that paints the picture, right? You know, I love the instrumentation though. Guitar, bass, drums, keyboard, saxophone, all sound great. And that organ coming in toward the end is a nice touch. So moving on to track 4. Peel the Paint. Now, Peel the Paint, heaviest song on the album. And I would say it's probably my favorite, definitely instrumentally my favorite. Love the way it starts off kind of soft with the violins, and then the guitars kick in, joined by the keyboards and the sax, and then Derek's very exaggerated vocals on this one. You know. I get it.
Great riff.
It sounds like he's sort of imitating the instruments, you know.
Yeah, he is.
Almost like a scat sort of thing. And Gary Green really showing what he's capable of on that guitar solo. It's just an awesome guitar solo. Love it. And then comes Mr. Class and Quality. Derek's vocals, I would say that in this one, they take on a more soulful kind of quality, almost like sounds a little Steve Winwoody on here, I think. And I like the way it starts out with the organ kind of slow, and then it picks up and gets a little funky, gets more upbeat, and it's got a lot of nice twists and turns on it. So I like that one a lot. And then it finishes off track 6, Three Friends. Love the way this one builds. Derek continues in that soulful vocal style that he had on the previous track. And I like the way the choral sounding vocals come in toward the end, and very majestic organ. And as the song fades out,
yeah,
that's just a great way to finish the album.
That's one of the greatest moments in the Gentle Giant catalog, I think, is kind of the way those last few songs.
I assume that I have only heard this.
Well, no other record really does that. Most of their albums feel like a collection of songs that have nothing to do with each other but hang together nicely anyway. This one actually has a thematic thing that kind of goes through the whole thing. Especially side 2 has a flow to it that's just really great. And
absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's really I think it's the first one I ever got a hold of, and it's still one of my very favorites.
First one I ever heard, and it's still one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I heard Prologue, it was just like, oh, this is neat. I like this. And I think I probably remember more about the music on that track than the vocals because they kind of come in later, and it's almost like, ooh,
Yeah.
was that an instrumental? No, it wasn't, but it almost was.
Yes.
It's not a terribly long album, only about 35 minutes, and 6 tracks, and you got the 2 longest one clocking in around 7.5.
Yeah.
So they're not really following that prog standard of the long epic songs. At least, apparently they don't do that. I thought maybe they might own other albums, but you're saying they don't.
No. Well, if you can imagine like a 15-minute epic that's as busy as their 5-minute songs, I think we'd be worn out by the time it was over. Like
Yeah, I think overall I kind of thought of it more almost in terms of a jazz fusion album than a prog album. They seem a little, to my ears, they sound a little more like jazz fusion, or jazz fusion meets prog anyway. But it definitely grabbed my attention. I would say if there's a weak spot on it, it would be the vocals on some of the tracks. Like I said, there may be a little bit of an acquired taste. Ask me months from now, and I may give you a different answer. It's just something that just kind of.
Would it surprise you to know that they have an album called "Acquiring the Taste"?
Yeah, I saw that. In fact, I went to my record store to buy it. Oh, shit, I gave it away.
That's okay.
I did not mean to do that.
No. So the question is, Scott, are you going to buy it? Are you going to maybe stream it occasionally? You're going to forget it.
Okay. Not only did I buy it, I ordered it online, but I got a twofer.
Oh, you got Octopus.
Octopus is also on here, which I have purposely not listened to yet because I didn't want it to taint my opinion of this album. I want to go in fresh and judge it on its own merit. So,
well, Octopus.
Now I can listen to it, so that's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to that.
Well,
I understand it's a heavier album. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say it's heavier. I'd say that it gets more complex and weird. I mean, there's some really atonal vocal things that happen. Like there's this tune on there called Knots that you're going to be like, what is this? It's like a dissonant vocal chorale is what I would call it. And then there's a really cool instrumental on there called The Boys in the Band. That's one of their coolest pieces of music, I think. So yeah, I mean, Octopus is considered one of their greatest records. So if you like Three Friends, I think you're going to like Octopus.
Yeah, I just recently watched Pete's ranking the albums, and I saw that those two were his top 2 albums, and Octopus.
Oh, really?
One,
okay.
I think, would you still call that number 1, Pete?
You know what? And I've said this many times.
And that's probably about 2 years old.
Yeah, with Gentle Giant, I changed my favorite album like the wind almost. But I will say pretty easily that my top 3 generally include those 2 and either Freehand or In a Glass House. Those to me are their 4 best albums.
Yeah.
But then again, Power and the Glory is great. Acquiring the Taste is great. The debut is a lot of fun. Interview is really cool. But I mean, you have my first 2 that I ever got were the same 2 that you just got there. So I have a real soft spot for those 2, and they almost seem, and Sean, maybe you can back me up on this. Those 2 albums seem like they came from like, not the same sessions, but like if they recorded both those albums a couple months apart, they kind of sounded. There's something about those 2 albums. They're kind of like 2 of a pair. Whereas I think like Freehand and Interview are another pair. Power and the Glory and Glass House is another pair. The first album's kind of on its own. Acquiring the Taste is kind of on its own. But yeah, you got 2 of the best right there. And I would argue if you said a lot of things that are very similar to my initial reactions to Gentle Giant. I originally loved the music right off the bat. I like the fact that it's so different and weird at times. The vocals took a little while for me to get used to. And once you do, you'll love them because they are.
I liked his vocals on the last 2 tracks, and so that tells me he's capable of doing a more, I guess, something I'm just a little more.
I think on first listen, sometimes some of his more exaggerated vocals come off as kind of strident, so it's kind of a little alarming to hear him really go full bore on some of these tunes. But I've grown to really love it, actually. It totally works. And there's really
I get that.
No vocalist in the world of prog that sounds like Derek. He is one of a kind. And I think that's the key to having a successful prog band. And that's why the 70s prog bands were so unique, because every one of their singers was very unique and unlike anybody you'd hear on the radio at the time.
Yeah, he's not like any of the other prog singers I can think of. I mean, maybe
I think he's got a
little Peter
more.
Gabriel.
Yeah, I think he's got a little more
Bit.
balls than a lot of them do.
Sure.
So
Which you'll hear in successive albums after those two, I think,
yeah.
because I think he really
It
came.
sounds like it's the kind of thing where you can listen to it, and every time you hear it, you hear something different. You hear something that you hadn't noticed before, and that's a good thing.
So what'll be interesting to see once we get done with today, and you go and listen to Octopus, what you think, and then if you want to go further, Sean, I'm curious.
I suspect I will.
Let's say he really likes both of these, and he decides he wants to investigate the catalog further. Where would you suggest he go next?
Freehand.
I would say the exact same thing.
Yeah, I see that one's ranked pretty high.
Yeah. Freehand is probably their most accessible yet really complex album. It's like everything on Freehand, like I wouldn't call Freehand like a weird album. Freehand makes perfect sense. It's very pleasing to the ears, but it's really challenging musically and vocally too. There's some stuff on the vocals they do on that album that's you won't hear anywhere else.
Yeah, it's another one of those, like there's a tune on there called On a Reflection that's kind of like, when you're a kid in grade school and we sang Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and you learned how, like you start here, and okay, you start the next time around, you start the next
round.
They kind of do that, but more in kind of a Baroque kind of a way, I guess is how I describe it. And
That's a good way of putting it.
And they do it beautifully. It's like you just don't hear that kind of influence in most rock music.
Yeah.
They're going way back for that.
And I guess if you want their most rock based album, In a Glass House or Power and the Glory.
I don't know, if you just want a straight up rock album from them, then get their last one called Civilian.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true.
I think it's where the 80s had dawned and they were trying to simplify things and cut out all the fussy bits, and for better or worse. If you kind of don't compare it to the previous records and enjoy it just as a rock record on its own, it really is solid. If you're expecting some Baroque counterpoint to pop out of nowhere like on the other records, you're not going to get that. But it was the 80s. So, I think it works really well for what it is.
Yeah. Cool. So we got a purchase. That's a good thing.
There you
go. Awesome. Good job, Scott.
2 thumbs up.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So now, Sean, what have you been given here for this assignment?
I was given Olivia Newton-John's greatest hits, and I've been a fan for years. So I was like, okay. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Not a bad greatest hits, actually. I own it.
She had perfect pitch, and so yeah. No, but seriously though, I was hooked up with a group that I have heard of. I've heard the name, but I couldn't name a single song by them if I had to. And it seems like they came from the very late 90s, but were kind of early 2000s sort of band was when they did the bulk of their work. And they're called My Morning Jacket. And I guess you can't wear it in the afternoon, so it has to be in the morning. So, and this group, or this particular album, is one of their more popular ones, I surmise, called It Still Moves. And like I said, I've heard these guys, but I never really heard them. Scott, I'm kind of curious, how did you run across them, and what turns you on about this band?
Some friends had recommended them. I think I actually heard them live at Austin City Limits Music Festival before I actually bought one of their albums, and they bring their A game live.
Yeah,
if you've ever seen them live, if you haven't,
I watched some footage on YouTube, but no, I never actually seen them. To me, these guys it's kind of a fog, early 2000s fog of these kind of, I don't know, is it indie or alternative or shoegaze, or I don't even know what you call it, but it's a genre that kind of was for a generation after mine. So a lot of these groups all kind of blend together, and even these 3-word titles, My Morning Jacket, there's just a lot of groups that kind of had those three kind of word names from this time period. The first thing I noticed when I put it on was that they've got some really nice guitar playing on this record, and there's a lot of nice textures, like little like jingly parts that come in and out of the mix. So you can tell that they kind of like to do some layering in the studio, and they remind me a bit of the group the Black Keys. Are you familiar with them? They are one of
I am.
they are one of the, I don't even know what you call the genre at this
Yeah,
point.
I never knew
But-
what to categorize them as.
But
Yeah.
kind of, kind of rootsy, kind of riffy, slightly blues inspired writing and singing as well.
The term indie rock gets thrown around a lot, and I would say Black Keys and My Morning Jacket are both in there, even though I would say their styles are very different.
Oh, they are definitely. Well, Black Keys sound is much more sparse. It's literally
Yeah.
one guy with a crappy Sears guitar from the 50s that cost $30 through a pig nose with a drummer. They don't even have a bass player. At least they didn't originally. My Morning Jacket is a much fuller sound than that.
Right.
And the vocalist, I'm not sure what his name is.
Jim
but
James.
He has a really nice voice. He's almost kind of haunting, almost like the howl of a ghost that is floating around your head when I listen to this. And so anyhow, just a few observations as I played it. What I decided to do was to play along with it. So
Oh, wow.
my observations are maybe more theoretical than you guys want to hear, but I'm going to lay it on you anyway, because I found some common threads that kind of tie these songs together. Because at first I listened to this record and I thought, these songs all sound alike. It's like one long song that lasts 45 minutes. There wasn't a whole lot to make each song kind of stick out on its own. Listening to it later, it was obvious that, they did have some slow tempo songs that were a little more bluesy, and they have some other songs that are a little more up tempo and kind of jangly. So there is some variety in there, but it wasn't real apparent initially. I had to dig a little bit. And one thing I discovered is these guys really like the key of F. And I imagine they have their capos on the first fret of most of their guitars on most of these songs, and I imagine it's because the singer's voice sits really nice in that key. So that's why they go for that. So do you have any idea, like, is this like, do you have other albums of theirs as well? Or was this like the only one that you're really?
No, I have their whole catalog.
Well, how does this set?
Top one on Friday, which
Okay.
I picked up. I've only listened to it once.
Well, to you, how does this compare to what they did later?
Actually, the one that followed this, Z, that was kind of considered their big breakthrough. And I would say there's probably some even, I would say that's a very arena friendly kind of album. Some big bombastic numbers on that one. And maybe leans a little more toward a little proggy, I mean, they're definitely not a prog band. I'm not trying to say that they are, but there are prog elements to it.
Yeah. Well, on this one, it seems more like kind of rootsy, kind of riffy, kind of Americana.
Psychedelic.
There's almost some country a little bit in the mix.
Yeah.
here
Oh
and
yeah,
there.
absolutely. There's definitely some country and maybe Southern rock kind of roots to it, I would say.
Yeah, I wouldn't call them straight up
Psychedelic.
Southern, but they're using a lot of the tropes that you find in that genre.
Yeah,
when
and
it comes to-
there's a jam band kind of thing, especially you see them live, you can kind of feel
I
that.
can imagine some of these songs could be jammed out for 20 minutes, I would imagine, quite easily.
Yeah, I wouldn't say any of them go that long, but yeah,
Okay.
they tend to extend them a bit.
So anyhow, the album cover, I don't even know what's up with that. It's like a stuffed grizzly bear adorned in like gold lame or something. And it's like, what the heck is this all about? And It Still Moves is the title. It's like, yeah.
And a lot of glare there.
Apparently it's not talking about the bear because he's stuffed, so he's not moving. So I'm not quite sure. But anyway, I'll dig in. I'm not going to talk about every track on here because there's quite a few of them, but I'll talk about 3/4 here. Well, the opener, there's one, I think it's called Mageeta. And I noticed that there's a lot of nice, like I said, a lot of layers of nice guitar on there. It's kind of chimey. Eventually, it breaks into something that's sort of in the Stones ballpark, I think, kind of rhythmically and chordally. And again, this is an F major tune. Um, and at the end, it just kind of jams out over three chords, F, C, and B flat, with a really cool riff. So that's a good opener. It really caught my ear. And then the next tune's a little more laid back. It's called Golden. It's kind of a nice little acoustic number with some pretty little country guitar bends in the background and kind of a nice climbing melody that follows what the acoustic guitar does. So that was nice. And then the next one is even more laid back. It's called Master Plan, and it's kind of a slow, dirgy ballad in D minor. Now, of course, when they get to the chorus, they go to F because D minor and F are they're relative to each other. So I knew sooner or later they were going to get back to F before they were done with that song, and they did. And then there's one that was kind of, I would assume, was kind of the single from this. There is a video that goes with it, and the tune is called One Big Holiday. And I thought this was one of the more catchy, up-tempo, accessible tunes just on the first listen. And they have kind of an interesting video that has almost like a Halloween kind of vibe to it, where it's all like dark silhouettes of everybody playing with kind of the glow of a pumpkin in the background or something orange. And this tune has a really cool riff. One of my favorite riffs on it is this kind of rising triplet thing that they do that is really catchy, and it comes back towards the end of the song. And, the verse is just like 4-chord rock. And then towards the end, they whittle it down to 3 chords and bring back the rising triplets again. So that's a pretty cool one. The next one was a little different. It's called I Will Sing You Songs. And I thought this was like a super slow ballad in the vein of early Pink Floyd, like something you might have found on Adam Hart Mother or one of those pre-Dark Side records. Very languid is the word I'd use. And it's 9 minutes long, so this is kind of approaches epic length, although the content of it, it doesn't have that many parts. And there's a lot of nice major 7th chords in this that reminds me of something that George Harrison would have done. Or even kind of like, I don't know if you heard a tune from David Gilmour's On an Island album called The Blue, but it reminds me of that vibe.
Okay.
Like really chill, pretty major 7th chords kind of floating by, kind of a floaty vibe.
I have to go compare those now.
Yeah, I kind of reminds me. There's also a tune from George Harrison on All Things Must Pass called "Let It Down" that has similar kind of verses. So yeah, really
Sean,
nice.
interesting side note here.
Yeah.
James, the singer, did a
Mhm.
solo album of George Harrison covers.
Okay, well then maybe I'm honing in
You're on the
something.
right track here, I think, Sean.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, well, very cool. I love that sound too. That's really nice stuff, and that's one of my favorite tunes on that particular George album. And the next one is called "Early Morning Rebel," and this could almost be like a Black Keys kind of thing. It's got a big kind of minor key riff that's anchored by a horn section. And then the chorus is real major and has almost a country kind of vibe. So that's an interesting juxtaposition going on there. This kind of, meaty minor riff meets kind of a more happy vibe for the chorus. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of the Black Keys, but not. And the last one I wrote down here is called "Run Through," and this starts with almost kind of almost a cliched F minor blues kind of guitar playing, but it's really tasty and really catchy. And then about halfway through the song, it breaks into this kind of bass with fuzz kind of riff on it, and the whole thing kind of builds up from there. Kind of a bass and drums breakdown, and then it's followed by some really surfy sounding reverbed guitar. And then
they're big on reverb.
Yeah, and then they kick on the fuzz on the guitars as well, and it becomes this big, huge kind of distorted sound. So and there's I think 2 or 3 other songs on the album as well. But here's one more. It's called "One and the Same," and That's the last song on the album, and I get the impression it's a fan favorite for a lot of people. Just reading the comments on YouTube, some people were losing their marbles when he played it recently and hadn't played it in 5 years. And I said it's a nice, haunting minor key ballad on the acoustic, and it has pretty sparse production, kind of a nice, quiet way to wrap the record up. So, yeah.
It's a good song. I've never heard them play it live, though. It's not on their live albums.
Okay. Well, maybe that's why
It's a good
people were
song.
freaking out. It's because it's a rarity to hear it in a live
So
setting.
yeah, I mean, people are probably just psyched to hear it because they don't hear it, you know.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So yeah, thanks for turning me on to this one. I enjoyed it. You know, I don't know if it's really in my wheelhouse per se, but that was kind of the fun of this show, was kind of getting exposed to something that I might not have ever run across otherwise. So thank you.
So Dance Floors, that one didn't really grab you?
You know, some of the other ones, it just after about 3/4 of the way through, I was just kind of spent, you know, and I went back to it several times later, and just nothing stuck. So it was just.
And some of the songs can go a little long.
Yeah, like I said, it's still kind of
go as long as they do.
Yeah, and it kind of felt like a wash after about halfway through. It was just kind of everything kind of ran together, to me anyway. So if that would be the
and you're looking at this in a lot more technical way than I do. I mean, I'm just a fan. I don't really play an instrument. I used to play drums a little, but
yeah. Well, you know,
I don't know a lot of the technical.
You know, I was looking to kind of figure out why it all felt like one continuous wash and the songs all just ran together. And I think it's because they kind of stick around in the same key for most.
Well, you said that F key, yeah.
Yeah, so I found out why, but it definitely made me wonder. So yeah, you know, it was enjoyable stuff though. I could just see kind of putting it on in the background and kind of chilling out with a beer or whatever, you know. So yeah.
So that basically answers my question. So, you know, would you go out and buy it, or would you maybe listen to it occasionally if you came across it, or would you kind of forget all about it after today?
I would listen to it occasionally in Scott's honor.
There you go.
But would I run out and buy it? And
be honest, man. I mean, if you know, don't feel like you have to spare my feelings.
Yeah, you know. Well, I didn't dislike it. I mean, it's not really something I would put on, because it depends. You know, if I want to get kind of, you know, laid back and chill out, I suppose it'd be great for that. But would I put it in the car when I'm driving down the road looking for some high energy stuff? No, because it's not really there as far as I can tell. It's kind of a haze for the whole record, you know. And when you're in that kind of mood and mindset, then I'm sure it's perfect.
One band they tend to get compared to a lot is Grateful Dead.
I can see that, but they seem a lot more. I don't know. I
mean, obviously, there's more modern touches to it, but
yeah. Well, the Grateful Dead has this sort of joyous major thing going all the time, and these guys definitely get into some kind of more somber tones at times than I've ever heard the Dead do.
True.
Scott, how many albums do they have, all told?
I want to say they have 8. I believe it's 8 studio albums.
Oh, okay.
Are they still at it?
They just. I think that the new one is the 9th. They just dropped a new one.
Are they? Oh, so they got a new one now, huh? Okay.
Yeah, it just came out. It's a self-titled album. It just came out on Friday.
Well, I'm gonna have to give a listen to some of the more recent stuff, because I'm just kind of curious to see how they evolved over the years.
Yeah, and they do. I would say their sound kind of changes up a bit, because on the very next album, on Z, they have a new guitarist and a new keyboard player, and those guys have been with them since Z. So
okay.
And the lineup's been pretty solid since then. Although they did take some time off. I mean, they released their album Waterfall in 2015, didn't release another one until 2020, and that was basically outtakes from the Waterfall sessions. And then this new one is like their first really new one in 6 years.
Which one is your favorite?
Z is probably my favorite, but like I say, it kind of goes back and forth between It Still Moves, Z, and their live album that's from the Z tour, Okonokos.
Okay. So, very cool.
You know, if you want to go further, I'd recommend Z next.
Okay, well, I'll look into that.
Cool.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Cool.
So we got a purchase and we got a stream online thing here today. Not too bad. We got two good analysis of two albums, and this was good discussion. So thanks for doing this, both of you. Hope this was fun for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I hope to see both of you again with a different partner next time around. So stay tuned for that. For Scott and Sean. Sean, you want to plug anything on Soul Night
Well,
Live?
thanks. I appreciate it. Well, in case y'all don't know, I have a musical talk show that is on YouTube, and my channel is /SOAL, which stands for Story of a Life, because these shows are slightly biographical when I sit people down and pick their brain about their life's work. So it's SOAL Night Live. And my most recent interview, I had a fantastic chat with 10cc's Kevin Godley last week. We chat for about 2.5 hours and discovered a lot of stuff about his career and his artistic process that I wasn't really familiar with. You know, he had a fantastic run of albums with 10cc, and then him and his writing partner Lal Cream left, and they kind of formed Godley and Cream and did some really, they were the more eclectic side of 10cc, the wackier side, and the more experimental side. And I realized that the things I like about those records are mostly because of them. The other side of the band wrote I'm Not in Love and then continued to write more stuff in that vein. And that's fine, but this 10cc was not a yacht rock ballad band, and they get lumped in there now because of that one song, but it's an anomaly, and the rest of their catalog is much more exciting. Anyhow, also
it seems to happen with a lot of bands.
Yeah, and Kevin and Lal became two of the most in-demand video producers of the 80s. I mean, the videos they did were huge. You Leave It from Yes, all the videos from Synchronicity for the Police. Remember Synchronicity #2, where Sting's on the giant pile of junk. The post-apocalyptic Mad Max kind of thing that was so popular in the early 80s. I pointed out all these videos. It's like the bomb dropped, but the hell with it, we're gonna dance. How many videos do we see like that in the early 80s? Like, we could do a show just on those.
There you go.
Anyhow, next week I'm going to be chatting with Andy Summers from the Police. He has a new book
nice.
called Fretted and Moaning, which is a collection of short stories that are somewhat biographical and somehow not. And he also has a new album out as well. So I'm delighted to get to chat with him. And I hope you all will tune in and check it out.
I would definitely be checking that out.
That would be awesome.
Very cool.
So
big Police fan.
Thank you much.
Yeah, great stuff. So thanks everybody for watching this latest installation of Album Homework Assignment. Tune in next Sunday for another one. Not quite sure who the two guests are going to be yet. I think we've got a whole bunch of people lined up that are heavily involved in their assignments. We just have to, now that I'm back from vacation, get it on the calendar. But stay tuned for that.
No jacket required, right?
No jacket required. There you go. Nice shirt, Scott.
Yeah, I finally get to wear it on here.
There you go. There you go. So for anybody watching who wants a Sea of Tranquility shirt like Scott's, or like this Hudson Valley Squares shirt, you can go to the link below where you can get these shirts and a whole lot of other things available. We've also got the link to our webzine, seaoftranquility.org, which is celebrating 20 years on the internet this year. In a couple of months, I won't have to say that any longer, but I've been pumping that all throughout the year.
Seems like it was only yesterday.
I know, right? It's like it was only yesterday. It's amazing. 20 years. Crazy. So, but thanks for watching. Like I said, visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. Check us out on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. But more importantly, we're here on this thing called YouTube all the damn time. For Scott Berry and Sean Tonar, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching Album Homework Assignment. See you tomorrow at the Hudson Valley Squares. Take care, everybody.
Y'all take care.
Very cool.